discipline responsible parties?
That's about a three-part question.
Yeah.
In the teaching, I think I know the textbook that is being referred to. We don't have time enough in here to describe the difference between empires and theocracies, but let's just say that particular textbook has used that language since I was in high school to describe that period of unconsolidated history in the Middle East. Here again, it has got to be balanced. We have secular schools. We need to not be teaching one-sided information in any class. It has got to be a balanced, measured, age-appropriate response. As far as the dates, I can't recall the dates off the top of my head.
Well, the film, I think I already told you very bluntly what I thought of the film. The reality is, this is America, and in America we have a freedom of religion. But freedom of religion also means that in our schools, if we're going to teach religion, we teach comparative religion, and we teach all religions. If we teach it factually, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, or whatever. It is freedom of religion in America, and we need to protect that at all costs. Your thanks.
Jay.
Jay, question Jay. Let's say a BOS member voted for a zoning change which would directly increase the property value of land they own. Would that supervisor be in violation of the new revised conflict of interest law? And what would you do in a similar situation? Well, first of all, I don't have anything that I can vote on that would do that. Basically, if voting on a case that provides you that is for your own benefit, obviously is a conflict of interest. A general, obviously I think it would depend on the circumstances involved. If you voted on something that would obviously provide you a direct benefit, if it's in general nature that affects everybody the same way, then it's not a conflict of interest. Let's say a BOS member voted for a zoning change which would directly increase the property value of land they own. Would that supervisor be in violation of the new revised conflict of interest law? And what would you do in a similar situation?
If my memory serves me right, that's a felony. I would not keep or sweep a felony under the rug. It would have to be reported to a proper person or authority. But if my memory is right, and the new conflict of interest law, I don't know how they class it. I don't believe it's classed as a misdemeanor. I think it's classed as a felony.
You will remain standing.
K.
Letter K. Renegotiation of the defaulted Winding Brooks CDA bond went from $37 million to a possible $89 million over the life of the bond. Now, BOS member has land rezoned on Lewistown Road in Route 1 to light industrial, thereby increasing the value after he oversaw the restructure of the Lewistown CDA bond. Tell me why this is not a conflict of interest.
I'm telling you why. I see it. You cannot legislate ethics. You can try. I do not see, there's no defense for that. I had said earlier what my feelings were about recusing yourself from situations like that. That makes my head spin. I'm sorry. I will not defend that in any form.
case you're referring to, you're talking about two entirely different apples and oranges. Winding Brook, Lewistown just happens to be a road. These two places were entirely different locations and not in any way connected.
You remain standing.
I didn't sit down.
X.
Letter X. Affordable workplace or workforce housing. Each candidate provide justification for or against county involvement in AWH. Referencing the recent HUD regulation does not address the principle of the matter, which is what is intended by the question.
Would you read that again? I'm not sure I understand.
Affordable workforce housing. Each candidate provides justification for or against county involvement in AWA or AWH. Referencing the recent HUD regulation does not address the principle of the matter, which is what is intended by the question. I guess with some background might help you. Providing housing types is a function of the market and is not a legitimate function of government.
I agree with the last part of that. The first part I'm not sure I fully understood. But housing is something every citizen has a right. Now, what type of housing that is depends entirely. Now, affordable housing for somebody who's working at McDonald's is an entirely different thing than affordable housing for a deputy. But everybody has a different level of affordable housing. The government should not be sitting out there building housing, nor should we be throwing additional stumbling blocks in front of the builders who are trying to build affordable housing and thereby increasing it to make it not affordable because the government wants to get involved. Leave it to the market, let the market determine the housing and let the housing be available. You know, obviously somebody who's working at McDonald's is not going to be able to buy a house. We do have to have some apartments in this community for the people who can't afford the house. And most of us have already lived in apartments at one time, but I know I have.
Affordable workforce housing. Each candidate provides justification for or against county involvement in AWH. Referencing the recent HUD regulation does not address the principle of the matter, which is what is intended by this question. A background is providing housing types is a function of the market and is not a legitimate function of government.
Well, I think you have heard what I feel about government overreach. I think you have heard what I feel about planning and zoning is to protect property owners from incompatible, unhealthy, and adverse development. This county has got enough problems now with its infrastructure, with its financial, with its forward-looking financial position, that we need to correct those before you start anything else. And I think that is an overreach. Zoning, careful planning and zoning should be directed toward infrastructure and building quality neighborhoods and quality markets and quality schools and quality public services. When you do that, the market will come, and it will be a market that is reflective of the market. It will be a market where items that we can't even think of are provided by entrepreneurs.
Your name.
W.
W. Question is W.
That's a big one.
Yeah, this is another mouthful. Control of residential development. With the elimination of cash proffers and the substitution of District RS for R-1 through R-4, the BOS has removed all barriers to high-density development. This has engendered, is that right? Strong, neighborhood opposition to recent zone change actions, which include multi-story apartment units. One remedy would be to amend the zoning ordinance to require harmonious transitions property defined. Do you support or not support, and why? And the background on this is the zoning ordinance prior to February 9th of 2000 contained residential harmonious transitions, albeit, skip a line? Oh, sorry. Let me start over there. The zoning ordinance prior to February 9th, 2000 contained residential districts 1, 2, 3, and 4. This at least gave developers a hierarchy, a step change pattern by which to provide the harmonious transitions, albeit such transitions were not required and egregious omission. There you go, thank you. Providing harmonious transitions is stated as a goal in the comprehensive plan, but the CP is only a guide, not a law. This goal is routinely trampled by developers and by extension, the BOS.
Did you memorize all that now?
I'm a little taken aback by that question, but I think you have heard me say several times what I think the purpose of zoning should be. I think what I hear you saying is that there are not specific enough, detailed enough transition zones within the zoning ordinance to ensure a smooth flow from higher density property to medium to lower density properties, and ensure the quietude and the comfortability of neighborhoods. Several questions ago, I stated, without this question coming up, that I would call to amend the comprehensive land use plan and to revise the zoning ordinance. I did not know this was coming, but boy, this gets right on it. We are lacking transition zones from highway retail. We have got other areas that are too burdensome. It needs to be revised. And I have been through that process several times.
I believe that, read that question.
Oh, no.
It was too much to remember it all. I remember the part he answered, but I don't remember the rest of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of change. I think the background is really the key part here. The zoning ordinance prior to February 9, 2000 contained residential districts 1, 2, 3, and 4. This at least gave developers a hierarchy, a step change pattern by which to provide harmonious transitions, albeit such transitions were not required, and egregious omission. There you go. Providing harmonious transitions is stated as a goal in the comprehensive plan, but the CP is only a guide, not a law. This goal routinely trampled by developers and by extensions, the BOS.
Well, I'm going to say that the zoning ordinance is a living document. It is amended on a regular basis. Now, the RS I know was put in a few years back to replace the R1s, R2s, and R3s and R4s to allow some more creativity in the style of the communities that were designed. Is that the perfect solution? I have had planning background too. I did study planning in school as well, and I've dealt with planners all my life. It's a really tough question to say it has to be black or white to do good work, creative work. It is important that the Planning Commission and the board look at all cases as they come on a case-by-case basis to make sure that these projects are good quality projects representative of what we expect here in Hanover County. As far as I do not believe that anybody is allowing developers to trample over this county.
You.
You. You're still up.
I turned it down.
Question you. Place all county spending accounts online for public review. Do you support or not support, and why? And for an example, Goochland placed the county checkbook online.
Goochland is a much smaller county than Hanover County, and as far as trying to put the checkbook online, we would need 3 full-time people to keep that document online. I was in a finance committee meeting today, and we were looking at preliminary year-end budget projections. And the fact of the matter is, we had 3 pages, and it was down to just departments. When you start trying, if you try and put every single transaction, you also have to put in some kind of explanation of every transaction, or nobody will ever have. We'd just be putting up something out there that would be chaos to do it in that manner. It all has to be available. It all is available. But to just throw it out there on the internet, I don't think would be a viable way of providing that information to the public.
Place all county spending accounts online for public review. Do you support or not support, and why? Background is Goochland place their county checkbook online.
I support a number of state agencies do that already. It takes work, data costs money. How much do you need? How fast do you want to go? But putting it out there is an important issue. Re-engineer your operating business model. Beef up your IT department. Put an easily searchable series of financial documents online. Descriptions, when people key in the invoices, there's a description field. I'm an accountant. I know what people go through, did it, had it, seen it done. Costs money. It is important. It helps people spot irregularities. It is part of the public coffers. I support putting it out there. And once it is rolling, that's where your initial cost is to get it rolling. It is not always the operating side of it that costs money.
R.
R. Question R. If you discovered that another supervisor was attempting to hide decisions from the public by attempts to avoid FOIA, what would you do?
Well, I'm a big advocate of FOIA. As I have said several times this evening, I want to see public information, easily searchable, timely and relevant, out where people can find it and access it day or night, not necessarily have to come to meetings. Make it available. We need to increase citizen response, comments, ideas, not curtail them. Don't make it harder for people, make it easier. So what you can do to strengthen forward, my feeling is, look, make public business available to the public.
I don't know if anybody that's been elected here is trying to violate the rules of FOIA. I mean, we all do call somebody. We've got people that I work with. If I want to find out, what do you think about this issue before it's coming up? Sure, I'm going to ask people, but we don't sit there and have meetings and make decisions on that. If people are doing that, then we've elected the wrong people. Because that is, as Mr. Millican said, we need to be open. This board is doing a very good job of that. We have just, for the first time, I know this has been around for years and years and years, asking us to go online and have live streaming of our board meetings. That is going to take place next month. If we can finish getting the microphones and the cameras to work. They didn't work too well at our last meeting, but we have installed all the equipment, and we will be live streaming our board meetings. As soon as all the quirks are worked out with that, the Planning Commission will be coming right behind it. Hopefully the schools will be right behind that.
B is in boy.
Letter B. In the current economy, taxpayers have very little disposable revenue. Where do you see an opportunity in Hanover to cut spending in order to make government more efficient and help those whom you represent?
First of all, keep the taxes low. We've been doing that over the past 3 years. We've eliminated taxes. We have not, as many of our neighbors have, added taxes for other purposes. We have increased our ability to do things by efficiencies and working to have a much more fiscally responsible government. 3.5 years ago, I talked about the government of this county over the past 20 years before that had grown at twice the rate of the population. We have slowed that down considerably while not slowing it down for our first responders and for our schools. All of those have actually been had increases in budget, and and the fire and EMS and sheriff's department have had increases in personnel, but we have reduced personnel in the non-public safety and education areas.
Millican? In the current economy, taxpayers have very little disposable revenue. Where do you see an opportunity in Hanover to cut spending in order to make government more efficient and help those whom you represent?
Government, like any other business, has two sides, revenue and expenses. Let me talk about a broader issue there. And I don't think this board really gets it. Building a large commercial economic base that represents more than 60% of the collected revenue is what you need to do to keep taxes low. Economic development keeps business cycles from impacting all of us. So think about your planning decisions. Try to build that base. Taxes are the last thing to consider. Unfortunately for some officials, it's the first thing they look at. They look at the taxes and it's either up or down, and they don't grasp the economy of the county and the region. I heard Mr. Peterson say that they have not impacted fire and EMS. We have fire and EMS stations that are closed and not manned. So we need to increase both the funds by re-engineering the operating system as well as keep the last resort to taxes.
You'll remain standing.
Yes.
A,
I'm sorry?
A,
A, letter A. We're finally up at the beginning. Goochland County government is posting all county expenditure checks online so the folks can see how and where their money is spent. It is cheap and transparent, and would you promote a similar effort in Hanover? Explain why. That basically goes with the other question.
Yeah, I think I answered that to the affirmative, and I hope I did, 2 questions ago. But yes, I am very, very, very much in favor of keeping your financial statements current, relevant, timely, easily accessible, and descriptive.
Again, I think it was the same question. I still agree. Everything in the financial aspects of the county need to be accessible to the citizens. I think it's overkill to try and put every single check that's written out by the county on the internet.
H,
H, letter H. The U.S. has fallen from first in the world in math and science to 35th. Can you tell us what caused this drop and what will have to be done to correct this?
I cannot tell you as an educator. I can just tell you my gut feeling is it's a change in the culture. When I was in school, we had class sizes, 28 and 30 kids in a classroom, 1 teacher and no assistant. And we were #1 in the world. But we also had parents that would kick our rear ends if we didn't do everything we were supposed to when we got home. The discipline was there that I'm having some problems seeing today. So I think a big part of the problems we're having is a lack of discipline within our culture. Now, I'm not talking about just the school, but our culture itself. If you talk to any of the teachers, how well their class does is heavily dependent on how well the parents do their job at home.
The U.S. fallen from first in the world in math and science to 35th. Can you tell us what caused this drop and what will have to be done to correct this?
There's no simple answer. There are multiple answers to the changing status of the United States versus any other country. It's how you measure tests, how they measure tests. That's not the issue. The issue is having robust curriculums, time on task. And I mean, when I say time on task, I mean working on that subject to master the content. That is where the effort needs to come. I don't disagree with parenting being a part of it. I alluded to that earlier. But teaching today information that is far, far more complex and more complicated than what we had in our undergraduate years is a difficult and time-consuming task. And we need to address it for what we have and what it is. It is a massive undertaking, and we need to put more time on it.
E,
Letter E. When the Board of Supervisors submit an agenda, there is a section called consent agenda. If you know, can you explain its purpose and why is it not discussed in open session? After the budget was passed this year, a position costing the taxpayer $68,500 per year was added by way of this consent agenda. Do you feel that that was appropriate?
You have two questions there, so let me try to break them down. The first one is, what is a consent agenda? It is an item on the agenda that should not require much discussion because prima facie on its face, it should be readily explainable. Secondly, they can be removed from the agenda and put on the public agenda if any board member wants. And I would say that people should have an opportunity to ask to take them off of a consent agenda and put on a regular agenda. But that is a matter of almost, let's just say, housekeeping. Now, I heard you say in the last that there was a position that cost a significant material amount of money. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is not necessarily a consent agenda. That probably should either be in personnel or on the regular agenda.
Mr. Millican explained the consent agenda very well. It is those items which have they're very clear, very straightforward, and have no real issues with them in general. Without knowing the specific case that this was referring to, because many times on the consent agenda, some of these things are maybe a $68,000 item, but it may be simply a transfer of $68,000 from this item to this item, which is really more in Mr. Millican's accounting aspect. But there's a lot of shifting that goes on from time to time. And for instance, the fire and EMS just added a new fireman's position. Part of that was done by shifting costs within the fire and EMS by one of the retirees who was a very highly paid battalion chief. That position by our new fire chief, he determined it was overclassified. He reduced the size of that and thereby was able to add another fireman on the front line at no cost to the county.
Remains same.
M,
Letter M. This is a multiple part too. Once plans are submitted for development and or rezoning, the land automatically comes out the land use tax exempted class. Describe the tax process which follows, and does the owner pay back a portion of the deferred tax? Going forward, is the land taxes at fair, and are they at fair market value?
The land use program is based very simply on forested and agricultural lands can be put into land use, which puts it at a lower taxing rate than the community. That rate only takes place as long as it stays in agricultural or forested land use. The minute that is rezoned and changed to another use, the owner or at the time of the rezoning is bound to repay, go back 5 years and pay the taxes for what it would have been had it been at normal appraised values.
Once plans are submitted for development and or rezoning, the land automatically comes out of the land use tax exempted class. Describe the tax process which follows, and does the owner pay back a portion of the deferred tax going forward as the land tax is at fair market value?
Well, there's a little bit more to it than that. There's a form that you fill out every year to stay within a land use program, and you declare, have you made any changes in land use to your property? If you've made anything, a half an acre, you're supposed to report it. That land then rolls back its value for 5 years. It's brought up to the assessed value now, and you will pay an increased tax on the property that you changed use on and submitted. With rezonings, same thing. But let me tell you, it's not just all of the property that you request. Land use may cover 100 acres. You may change a use of 1 acre. When you report that 1 acre has its value raised, taxes roll back. The other 99 can stay the same. When zonings are applied for, whatever you apply for in zoning is taken out of land use, but it needs to be something that is monitored, and it should be monitored with an on-site visit to the property every year.
If you'll remain standing.
V.
The letter V as in victory. This is another zoning ordinance question. Acreage cannot be developed due to slope or wetlands should not be included in the denominator of the residential density calculation. Do you support or not support, and why?
To protect wetlands, to protect environmentally sensitive areas, wetlands should be separately delineated. They really should not be in the residential area, because that distorts the density of the residential development. The state forestry department subscribes to 50 feet on either side of a wetland being left in a natural state. I am a longtime outdoorsman, hunter, fisherman. I firmly believe that should be extended because of what I have seen in the fields of siltation and damage and land erosion. It is choking streams that are not choked, but it should not be, for zoning purposes, counted as residential area because it distorts the requirements.
Wetlands obviously is a big issue, particularly in the Chesapeake Bay area, which is practically all of the state of Virginia. The areas that are being preserved and kept in their natural state are for the purposes of protecting our waters. This is a totally different item versus density. As the densities are looked at, and the densities are not set that every piece of property has to have a certain density. The densities are, as we talked earlier, as Mr. Millican talked earlier, this is where you deal with transitions and look at the other properties, other developments nearby, and make sure that you work within a compatible situation to develop properly, make sure that growth in our community is done properly. To sit there and just automatically exclude all this land and not allow the owner to use any of that land for any purpose, including density calculation, is frankly taking of a person's property without due compensation.
Well, that's the end of our regular questions, so if you will, we'll start with you, Mr. Peterson.
Okay.
And let you do closing.
Okay, I will I will try and keep this very succinctly. I think the thing that's important is, where are we? What, you know, where have we been, where were we, where are we now, and where are we going in the community? As I pointed out earlier, we've been working over the last 3.5 years to really slow down the excessive growth of government. However, at the same time, there's a lot of information that's been out there in the newspapers and that has not necessarily been the whole truth. For example, how many of you have heard how much money's been taken away from the schools? I know you've seen it all in the newspapers. The reality is, the school budget in 2012, when I took office, was $1 million. I had it right here just in front of me. It was $1,700,000 and some thousand once you took away the debt service that was included in the school budget. Now, we took the debt service away in 2013 so that the schools no longer had to pay that. That is taken over to the county side of the budget. Today's school budget is $4.5 million more than it was in 2012. And the expenses have been removed. Everybody wants to talk about it's a lower budget number, but the expenses are much lower than the difference in the revenues. Same thing, we've talked about the fire department. The fire department has added, I believe it was 14, we've had 14 different people over this time. The sheriff's department, when we took over, had 7 approved positions, all unfunded and empty. They have each all been funded now. They've all been in there. In addition to that, we have added another 6 last year, and we've got 4 more coming in this year, in the fiscal year 16 budget. So we've got a AAA bond rating for a reason. We've got a strong physical presence in this community, and we need